Ladies and gentlemen, listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you could change everything in your life. It only takes 2 minutes. 2 minutes to shift your energy. 2 minutes to move from doubt to certainty. 2 minutes to turn a decision into action that rewrites your future. Most people think change has to be this long, drawn-out process. They think, one day I'll get around to it. Someday I'll start. No, that's the lie. The truth is, transformation doesn't take years. It doesn't even take months. It takes a moment of decision, and that moment can happen in less than 120 seconds. Think about it. In 2 minutes, you can pick up the phone and make the call you've been avoiding. In 2 minutes, you can write down a vision for your life that ignites you every morning. In 2 minutes, you can drop the excuse, shift your posture, take a deep breath, and step into the strongest version of yourself. Your destiny changes the second you decide, I'm done living small, I'm done waiting, I'm starting now. And here's the secret. Action creates energy. You don't wait for motivation. You create it with a single step. 2 minutes of courage, 2 minutes of commitment can break the chains of procrastination that have held you back for years. So I challenge you right here, right now, give yourself 2 minutes. Stand tall, breathe deep, make the decision you've been postponing. Take one bold action, because your life is not waiting for you. Your future is screaming for you to show up. And it only takes 2 minutes. Change begins in a single decision, not a lifetime of waiting. Too often people imagine that transformation is something distant, something reserved for when conditions are perfect, when the timing is right, when they finally feel ready. They tell themselves stories about needing more time, more resources, more knowledge before they can truly start. But the truth is that change does not wait for the stars to align. It begins the instant you choose with absolute clarity that enough is enough, and you are moving forward regardless of the circumstances around you. That decision is the spark that ignites everything else. Without it, all the strategies, tools, and opportunities remain untouched potential. With it, even the smallest step becomes a massive leap forward because it is backed by certainty and commitment. A single decision carries more weight than months or years of hesitation. Think about how many people linger in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, or habits that destroy their energy simply because they avoid making one powerful decision. They wait for a sign, for permission, for confidence to magically appear. And while they wait, time slips away. But the moment they finally draw a line in the sand and say, I will no longer tolerate this, I will no longer settle, I will create something better, that moment becomes a pivot point that reshapes the trajectory of their entire life. Change does not arrive gradually in those moments. It arrives instantly because the decision itself is the change. When you decide with full commitment, your brain and body begin to operate differently. It's as if the nervous system comes alive with a new level of focus and energy. Suddenly, options you never noticed become visible. Resources you thought you lacked appear. The same situation looks different because you are different. It isn't the world that transformed, it's your perspective, and perspective is what drives behavior. A committed decision pulls you into action. Without that decision, you dabble, you test, you dip your toe in the water. But with it, you jump in fully, and that immersion creates momentum. Consider how quickly life can shift when someone makes a real decision. A person decides to quit smoking after years of failed attempts. They throw away the cigarettes, they change their routine, and they never go back. Another decides to start a business after years of dreaming about it. They make the call, register the name, create their first offer, and momentum begins. Someone else decides to stop tolerating disrespect in a relationship. They speak up for themselves, set a boundary, and instantly their self-worth rises. These changes didn't require decades. They required a single moment of choice. That is the power of decision. What keeps most people stuck is not that change is hard, but that indecision consumes them. Indecision drains energy, creates doubt, and leaves them trapped between possibilities. It's like standing in the middle of two roads, looking left and right, imagining what each path could bring, but never moving. The longer you stand still, the heavier your feet become until it feels impossible to move at all. But the instant you choose a direction, even if you don't have all the answers, life responds. Doors open, clarity grows, confidence builds. That's the paradox. Confidence doesn't come before the decision, it comes after. The most successful people are not those who always make perfect choices. They are the ones who decide quickly and adjust along the way. They understand that waiting for perfection is just another name for fear. They know that movement creates clarity, and clarity is born from experience, not from endless thinking. By deciding, they force themselves into motion, and that motion teaches them more in days than hesitation could in years. Every great breakthrough began with someone saying, I've decided. That phrase alone carries the weight of transformation. Decisions also shape identity. The moment you decide to be the kind of person who takes action, who faces fear, who steps up despite uncertainty, you are no longer the same individual who hesitated. Your identity shifts with your choices. Say to yourself, I am committed, and notice how it changes the way you stand. Breathe and think. That's not imagination. That's physiology responding to conviction. A decision reshapes your internal state, and your internal state drives your behavior in the external world. We can see this truth in the smallest examples of daily life. You decide to get up when the alarm rings instead of hitting snooze. That tiny decision sets the tone for your day. You decide to drink water instead of reaching for soda, and your body thanks you with more energy. You decide to send a message of gratitude instead of scrolling mindlessly, and your relationship strengthens. None of these take months of preparation. They take one moment, one choice. Multiply those small decisions, and suddenly your life looks radically different. Yet many people underestimate this power because the decision feels too small to matter. They think only the big decisions count: moving to a new city, starting a company, ending or beginning a major relationship. But the truth is that those larger shifts are built on hundreds of smaller choices. Every single one matters because each one strengthens the muscle of decisiveness. The more you practice choosing with clarity and conviction, the easier it becomes to face the bigger crossroads when they appear. And then there are the moments when a decision literally divides life into before and after. You can look back and pinpoint the second you said, never again, or I'm starting now, and you know that everything changed from that point forward. You didn't just take a step, you became a new version of yourself. That moment might not have looked dramatic to the outside world, but inside it was an earthquake. You crossed a threshold and there was no going back. That's the essence of real transformation. It isn't gradual improvement that drifts in unnoticed. It is the lightning strike of a decision that says, from this moment on, things will never be the same. And even if the outer results take time to fully unfold, the inner shift has already occurred. That is why change begins not with years of planning or endless self-help strategies, but with one decisive instant. Once you've truly decided, the rest is just follow through. 2 minutes of action can break years of procrastination. Most people underestimate what 2 focused minutes can do because they've convinced themselves that big changes require massive amounts of time and effort. They imagine that in order to overcome years of delay, they need months of perfect planning, hours of preparation, or endless motivation. But the reality is that momentum doesn't care about size, it cares about initiation. When you take 2 minutes to begin, you disrupt the cycle of hesitation that has held you hostage. You override the pattern of waiting, and you prove to yourself that progress is possible right now. Procrastination thrives in the mind, not in reality. It feeds on imagined complexity, on thoughts like, this will take forever, or I'll start when I feel ready, or I don't know enough yet. Those thoughts paralyze action, creating the illusion that you're trapped. But the moment you use just 2 minutes to take a simple step, you shrink the task into something tangible and achievable. Instead of trying to climb the entire mountain at once, you just take the first step, and suddenly the mountain doesn't look impossible anymore. That's the hidden power of beginning. Once you're in motion, the weight of procrastination begins to dissolve. 2 minutes may seem small, but the brain doesn't measure progress in hours. It measures state changes. When you act even briefly, you shift your state from passive to active, from stuck to moving, from hesitation to creation. That shift alone rewires how you feel about the task in front of you. For example, sitting down to write for 2 minutes may not produce a finished book, but it destroys the story that says, I can't start. Making that first call in 2 minutes won't build an empire, but it eliminates the resistance that says, I'll do it later. And often those 2 minutes stretch into more, because once momentum begins, continuing becomes easier than stopping. There is a psychological principle at work here. The hardest part of any action is the starting point. Beginning requires the most energy because it involves breaking inertia. Think of a train at rest. Getting it to move the first inch demands enormous effort, but once it's rolling, momentum carries it forward with less resistance. Human behavior works the same way. Procrastination is heavy inertia. 2 minutes of focused action is the push that gets the wheels turning. After that, momentum starts working for you instead of against you. Consider how procrastination builds over time. A student puts off studying until the night before the exam. An entrepreneur delays launching their idea for years, always waiting for the perfect conditions. A professional avoids having a difficult conversation at work, letting tension grow day by day. In every case, the longer the delay, the heavier the task feels. The story in the mind inflates the difficulty far beyond the reality. But when the student opens the book for 2 minutes, when the entrepreneur writes the first draft of their pitch in 2 minutes, When the professional speaks up for 2 minutes, the mountain shrinks instantly. Years of avoidance begin to dissolve because action collapses the illusion of impossibility. The truth is, procrastination is not a time problem. It is an emotional problem. It comes from fear, from overwhelm, from self-doubt, and emotions shift fastest when action interrupts them. You cannot think your way out of procrastination because the thinking is the trap. Action is the antidote. 2 minutes is enough to pierce the fog of hesitation, to bypass the mind's excuses, and to prove that the fear was exaggerated. It is a reset button, a way of telling your nervous system, I am in control, not the delay. You can see this clearly in physical movement. When you feel tired and unmotivated, the thought of exercising for an hour feels unbearable. But if you tell yourself you'll just move for 2 minutes, stretch, do a few push-ups, walk around, the state shift begins, energy rises, and suddenly what seemed impossible feels doable. Those initial 2 minutes dismantle the belief that you don't have the strength or time. They open the door for more. And even if you only did 2 minutes, it is infinitely better than none because you've weakened the cycle of avoidance. 2 minutes also builds self-trust. Every time you do what you said you'd do, even in a small way, you reinforce the belief that you can count on yourself. This is the opposite of procrastination, which erodes self-trust with every broken promise. Someone who delays constantly tells themselves, I'll start tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes, and over time they stop believing their own words. But if you commit to 2 minutes and actually do it, you rebuild credibility with yourself. That credibility compounds into confidence, and confidence makes larger actions natural. It's important to understand that 2 minutes is not about finishing the task, it's about piercing the resistance. Once you prove to yourself that beginning is possible, the emotional wall loses its power. A writer who stares at a blank page for hours could instead commit to writing 1 sentence in 2 minutes. That single sentence cracks open the flow, and often the words keep coming. A person avoiding cleaning their home could spend 2 minutes clearing 1 counter. That action shifts the energy of the space, and momentum carries them further. A leader avoiding tough feedback could spend 2 minutes initiating the conversation, and suddenly they're in motion, saying what needs to be said. The outcome may take longer, but the victory is in the start. This principle is why so many breakthrough stories sound simple in hindsight. People often say, it all changed when I finally just started. Years of thinking, worrying, delaying collapsed into one decisive moment of action. That moment might have been as short as 2 minutes, but it shattered the illusion of impossibility that had kept them stuck. The breakthrough wasn't in the grand strategy, it was in the willingness to begin. The irony is that procrastination always exaggerates the difficulty of action, but action always reveals how exaggerated that difficulty was. You tell yourself the email will take hours, but 2 minutes in, it's half written. You imagine the workout will drain you, but 2 minutes in, you feel alive. You believe the conversation will be unbearable, but 2 minutes in, you're relieved you finally said it. That's the magic of using time in small intentional bursts. It collapses the fear-based story and replaces it with evidence that you are capable. 2 minutes of action is not about time. It is about breaking a pattern. It is a psychological hack, a way to bypass the perfectionism and fear that fuel procrastination. Once the pattern is broken, you're no longer stuck in the cycle of avoidance. You've proven that progress is possible now, not someday, and once you've done that once, it becomes easier to repeat. The more you practice it, the weaker procrastination's grip becomes until action feels natural and delay feels foreign. Energy is created by action, not the other way around. People often wait for a wave of motivation to strike before they take the first step. They believe they must feel energized, inspired, or fully ready before moving, as if motivation is a prerequisite to progress. But the truth is, energy doesn't magically appear while you sit still, thinking, analyzing, and waiting. Energy is a byproduct of doing. The very act of moving, engaging, and applying effort generates the fuel you thought you needed beforehand. Waiting for energy is like waiting to get warm before you light the fire. It is backwards. The fire only comes once you strike the match, and that match is action. Think of the times when you felt drained, convinced you had no strength to do anything. Maybe you didn't want to work, exercise, or handle responsibilities. Yet the moment you forced yourself into motion, something shifted. Once you started moving your body, once you began writing, once you picked up the phone, your state changed. Suddenly you felt more alive, more focused, more capable. Nothing external gave you energy in that moment. You created it by acting. The body follows motion, the mind follows focus, and energy rises as a result. This principle is visible in every area of life. Athletes don't wait until they feel limitless energy before training. They train, and through training, energy builds. Writers don't sit around waiting for a perfect burst of inspiration. They sit down, begin typing, and the process itself unlocks creativity. Leaders don't wait for confidence before making tough decisions. They act, and confidence grows because they chose action over hesitation. In each case, the energy came after, not before. That is the power of action. It is the spark that creates the emotional and physical state we thought we needed in advance. The mistake many people make is confusing anticipation with reality. In anticipation, the mind exaggerates the weight of action. You think the task will drain you, so you delay it. You imagine it will consume too much energy, so you save it for later. But the reality is that once you begin, the opposite happens. Your body and brain light up, momentum builds, and you end up with more energy than you started with. The anticipation is heavy, the action is freeing. 2 minutes of doing creates more fuel than 2 hours of thinking about doing. Consider how this shows up in physical movement. On days when you feel sluggish, you might tell yourself you're too tired for exercise, yet if you give yourself permission to move for just a short while your blood flows, endorphins release, and suddenly you feel energized. That boost doesn't come from thinking about moving. It comes from the act of moving. Energy multiplies with effort, not with waiting. This is why some of the most exhausted people feel renewed after exertion, because their bodies respond to action with vitality. It works the same way in mental and emotional energy. When you're overwhelmed by a project, your brain convinces you that you need to rest or avoid it to regain energy. But avoidance drains more than action ever could, because avoidance carries guilt, frustration, and the weight of unfinished work. The mind loops on what isn't done, which bleeds energy. The moment you act, even in the smallest way, that weight lifts, a sense of progress sparks momentum, and that momentum feels like energy. What once looked exhausting now looks possible, not because the work changed, but because you change your state by starting. This truth is why the most productive people are not the ones who wait for perfect conditions. They are the ones who act regardless of how they feel. They understand that feelings are followers, not leaders. If you wait to feel motivated before taking action, you may wait forever. But if you take action first, motivation will follow. Feelings align with motion, not with stillness. The leaders, creators, and performers who consistently show up are not superhuman. They are simply disciplined enough to begin, knowing that energy will rise to meet them once they are in motion. The brain is wired to respond to progress. Each small action triggers a release of dopamine, the chemical of reward and motivation. That means every step you take generates a microburst of energy and drive. This is why starting feels hard, but continuing feels natural, because the brain rewards action with more energy to keep going. It becomes a self-perpetuating loop. Act, feel energized, act more, feel even stronger. Waiting does not trigger this loop, only doing does. This is nature's way of reinforcing forward movement, but you must be the one to initiate it. Energy created by action is also contagious. When you step into motion, you radiate vitality that influences those around you. People feel your momentum, and they often match it. Think about walking into a room where someone is enthusiastic, engaged, and alive with action. The energy spreads. Compare that to a room where everyone is waiting for someone else to move first. The air feels heavy, stagnant. By acting, you don't just create energy for yourself, you create it for others, shifting the environment from hesitation to momentum. This principle can be applied in every daily challenge. A student waiting for focus to study can instead set a timer and dive in for a few minutes, discovering that concentration grows after starting. A professional dragging their feet on a project can take one small step, like sending an email or opening a document, and notice how progress fuels more energy. Someone struggling to connect socially can choose to initiate one conversation. And the interaction itself generates the energy for deeper engagement. Across all these examples, energy is not a precondition, it is the reward for action. Even when fear or doubt is present, action produces energy that dissolves the negative state. Fear paralyzes when left unchallenged, but when you move forward despite it, adrenaline becomes fuel. The very energy of fear is redirected into momentum because motion transforms emotions. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it, and in doing so, converting fear into vitality. This is another way energy is created by action, by converting hesitation into drive, anxiety into focus, and uncertainty into learning. People who live with high energy are not necessarily born that way. They cultivate it through consistent action. They wake up and move their bodies. They start their projects without waiting for inspiration. They take small actions toward their goals daily, and those actions compound into vitality. What seems like natural energy is often practiced behavior, a cycle of doing that continuously generates more power to keep doing. Anyone can create this, but only if they stop waiting for the feeling and start creating it through movement. Action is the generator of the very fuel you think you lack. It is the engine that powers motivation, confidence, and vitality. Waiting drains you, moving fills you. The proof is in every lived experience where starting seemed impossible, yet once you began, everything shifted. Energy rises for the door, not the dreamer. The key is to remember that you don't need to feel ready, energized, or motivated before acting, because the act itself is the source of those states. Small, immediate steps ignite massive momentum. People often get overwhelmed by the size of their goals, looking at the distance between where they are and where they want to be, and feeling paralyzed by the enormity of it. They see the mountain, not the step in front of them, and because of that, they convince themselves they don't know where to start, or that they don't have what it takes. But momentum doesn't come from conquering the mountain all at once. It comes from the first move, the smallest decision, the simplest action taken without hesitation. That tiny step, seemingly insignificant in the moment, is the spark that lights a chain reaction leading to massive transformation. Momentum is not about speed at the start, it is about direction. Taking one small step shifts your trajectory, and that shift compounds over time. If a rocket changes its course by just a few degrees at launch, that tiny adjustment determines whether it orbits the Earth or reaches the moon. Human behavior works the same way. One small choice, repeated consistently, sets you on a radically different path than the one you were on before. The power lies not in the size of the step, but in the fact that it initiates movement. Movement gathers momentum, and momentum carries you further than you could ever imagine at the beginning. Think of how difficult it feels to start when you've been still for too long. Inertia has weight, and the longer you wait, the heavier that weight feels. But once you take a single step, once you engage in even the smallest action, the heaviness begins to lift. It is like pushing a car stuck in neutral. At first, the resistance feels enormous, but with steady pressure, the car starts to budge, and then suddenly it rolls forward more easily than you expected. That's the physics of momentum. Resistance is strongest at the start, but once you move, movement creates more movement. Small steps are the push that gets everything going. Many people underestimate how quickly momentum can build because they only measure progress in large milestones. They think success is about the massive breakthrough, the big leap, the dramatic transformation. But real progress is the accumulation of small, immediate actions taken again and again. A person who commits to reading 10 pages a day can finish dozens of books in a year. A person who walks for 15 minutes daily can transform their health over time. A person who invests a small amount consistently can build wealth that compounds beyond imagination. The small step may not feel powerful in the moment, but its compounding effect creates massive results. Momentum also reshapes identity. The moment you take a small step, you stop being someone who only thinks or talks about change, and you become someone who acts. That identity shift is profound. You no longer see yourself as stuck because you have evidence that you're in motion. This is why even the tiniest action matters. It proves to yourself that you can move forward, and that proof fuels confidence. Confidence then fuels larger actions, and larger actions generate even greater momentum. The cycle feeds itself, but it always starts with something small and immediate. Consider someone who has put off starting a business. The idea of launching, marketing, selling, and scaling feels overwhelming, so they wait. But if they simply spend one evening sketching their vision, one afternoon talking to a potential customer, or 1 hour setting up a basic website, suddenly the dream feels real. That small step creates excitement, and excitement becomes fuel for the next step. Before long, what felt impossible becomes inevitable because the energy of momentum carries them forward. The leap was not in starting the company. It was in taking the first small step that shifted their state from waiting to creating. This principle shows up in personal growth as well. Someone who has struggled with fitness may look at the idea of running a marathon and feel hopeless. But if they start by putting on running shoes and walking around the block, they create momentum. That single action builds self-trust, and tomorrow they do a little more. Soon the identity of a non-runner fades, and the identity of an active person grows. Over time, the marathon becomes achievable not because they set out to conquer it in one go, but because they honored the power of small, immediate steps that multiplied into massive change. Momentum is also psychological. The human brain loves completion. When you take a small step and finish it, you get a burst of dopamine, which creates a sense of accomplishment and motivates you to keep going. This is why checking items off a list feels satisfying. It fuels momentum. The more small completions you create, the more energized and focused you become. Big goals feel overwhelming, but broken into small steps, they become a series of wins. Each win accelerates progress, and suddenly you're not dragging yourself forward. You're being pulled by the energy of your own momentum. Even when fear is present, small steps are the bridge. Fear thrives in the unknown, but when you take a small action, you replace uncertainty with clarity. You don't have to know the entire path. You just have to take the next step. That step reveals more of the path ahead, and each new step reduces fear. Momentum grows stronger than hesitation, and what once felt terrifying becomes manageable. Small actions not only create progress, they dissolve fear by replacing it with evidence that you are capable. People often look at successful individuals and assume they achieve greatness through massive leaps. But if you study their stories closely, you find the same pattern. They started small. They made a phone call, wrote a single page, attended one meeting, posted one idea. Each small action led to another, and the chain reaction built momentum that carried them to heights they never could have reached in one giant move. The mountain of success is climbed step by step, not in a single bound. Momentum is also resilient. Once you build it, it becomes harder to stop than to continue. Think of a snowball rolling down a hill. At the top, it is small and requires effort to move. But as it rolls, it gathers more snow, gains speed, and eventually becomes unstoppable. Small steps are the push that starts the snowball rolling. What begins as modest effort turns into massive force, not because of the size of the first step, but because of the compounding power of momentum. The key is to start now with whatever small step is available. Waiting for the perfect time or the perfect plan only reinforces stagnation. Action, no matter how small, creates movement, and movement creates opportunity. A phone call, a single note, a 5-minute effort. These are not trivial. They are the ignition switch for the engine of momentum. Once that engine is running, it will carry you further than you ever imagined when you were standing still. Your future is shaped in moments, not someday. Too many people live in the illusion of someday. They say they will change when the timing is better, when the pressure is gone, when they feel more prepared. They imagine a distant day when all conditions will align perfectly, and then finally they will act. But life does not work like that. The future is not written in the vague, undefined idea of someday. It is carved out of the moments you choose to act, decide, and commit. Every choice you make today shapes the reality you live in tomorrow. Every small decision becomes a building block in the foundation of your future. Think about how much power a single moment holds. A conversation can alter the trajectory of your career. A decision to walk away or to lean in can change the course of a relationship. A choice to invest in yourself, to take a risk, or to pursue a new path can create opportunities you never imagined. These pivotal moments are rarely planned or staged. They come disguised as ordinary seconds, and yet they carry the weight of your future. Waiting for someday is a way of handing over that power. Claiming the moment is how you take it back. The truth is, your life is a collection of moments strung together, and in every one of them you are making decisions that shape what comes next. Most people underestimate this because they think only the big decisions matter: choosing a career, starting a family, buying a house. But the big decisions are only visible milestones built on countless smaller ones. The choice to wake up early instead of sleeping in, to focus instead of procrastinate, to connect instead of withdraw. These small decisions compound over time. The future is not created in one grand leap, but in the accumulation of moments where you chose to move forward instead of standing still. The danger of believing in someday is that it becomes a trap. Someday always moves further away. You tell yourself you will start the business someday, improve your health someday, mend the relationship someday, but someday never arrives because it is not real. It is an excuse disguised as patience. The only real time you have is the moment you are in now. Every time you delay, you are shaping your future as much as when you act, but you are shaping it by default instead of by design. Waiting is still a choice, and it creates a future of more waiting. Moments are opportunities, and opportunities don't always knock twice. That phone call you hesitate to make, that idea you keep on the shelf, that chance you keep postponing may not be there tomorrow. The world is constantly shifting, and windows of opportunity open and close faster than we realize. When you hesitate, you may not just delay progress, you may miss the chance entirely. The people who move forward in life are not always the smartest or the most prepared. They are the ones who recognize the moment and act on it before it slips away. This is why awareness is so important. You must learn to recognize the weight of the present moment, even when it looks ordinary. The choice to push yourself into the gym when you don't feel like it, to speak up when you'd rather stay silent, to begin when you'd rather delay. Those choices don't just impact today. They ripple forward into your future. Each one is a vote for the kind of life you are creating. Every moment is a ballot, and the results are revealed in the person you become years from now. Think of the people who inspire you most. If you trace their journeys back, you will find defining moments. They chose courage when it would have been easier to choose comfort. They chose action when fear told them to wait. They didn't wait for someday. They acted in the moment they had. That is why they became who they are. Their future was not an accident. It was shaped by the choices they made in moments of decision, moments that might have seemed small at the time but proved to be monumental. Moments also shape your beliefs. When you decide in a single moment that you will no longer tolerate less than you deserve, you instantly alter your identity. When you decide in a moment that you will commit fully to your vision, you shift the way you show up every day. These decisions don't take years to create. They happen in an instant. And in that instant, your future takes on a new trajectory. You may not see the full outcome immediately, but the seed is planted, and from that seed grows a new reality. The idea of someday is seductive because it feels safe. It allows you to imagine a better future without facing the discomfort of action now. But it is also a thief, stealing the only resource you cannot replace: time. Every moment you postpone is a moment you never get back. Someday thinking robs you twice, once in the lost opportunity of the present and again in the regret of the future. Those who wait for someday often look back with the pain of wishing they had acted sooner. The weight of regret is heavier than the discomfort of action, but by then the chance is gone. Your future is not shaped by wishing, hoping, or planning for someday. It is shaped by what you do in the moments you are given right now. This means that everything counts. The way you respond to challenges, the way you treat people, the way you handle fear and uncertainty, all of it builds your future. Even when the step feels small, even when the moment feels insignificant, it matters. You are always shaping what comes next with the choices you make now. The most liberating truth is that you don't have to wait for a perfect moment, because the moment you are in is already perfect for starting. It may not be comfortable and it may not be easy, but it is real and it is yours. Every future breakthrough begins in a present moment that someone decided not to waste. The question is not whether your future will be shaped. It always will be. The question is whether you will shape it intentionally through action in the moment, or whether you will let it drift into the vague promise of someday.